What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Cross Guild Chronicles. Shady, how you doing, man?
What's going on, man? What's going on? How we doing? I'm good.
Hey, busy weekend for you. I know you've got a lot going on, so I'm glad we got on the mic and we're able to drop into this week's topic. As you can tell, I'm supporting my guy, Trafalgar Law. Got the whole fit on. Trambush. But, just hanging out. I'm excited to talk about this topic today, man. We're going One Piece factions. Anything you want to talk about before we get into it today?
I mean, not really, because this is a great topic, and I'm just excited to honestly just get straight into it. I feel like it's just good timing for this topic, considering LBAF is starting, and the events of Wano and Egghead have really actually gotten us to the point where we believe the end is actually here for One Piece. For years, it's been like, okay, I'll believe it when I see it, Oda. You're talking in your SBSs, you want this thing to end in 5 years. Not happening, right? But we're finally at a point where it actually feels like that.
Yeah, we can see that the end is on the horizon. At least, I don't know if the timetable is going to fit perfectly, but like you said, this is an ideal topic for an ideal time. Everything's leading to this. Let's jump right into it. Shady, let's talk about our first faction, the Cross Guild. Now, Cross Guild was obviously formed in mind from Crocodile and Mihawk, and due to, Buggy owing Crocodile a lot of money, he went with that route. That's how Buggy gets drawn in. But Buggy having, the popularity and everything that he has, gets named one of the four emperors, and he is the de facto figurehead leader of the Cross Guild. But it's really Crocodile and Mihawk. So first things first, looking at the Cross Guild, we know they've done a lot of cool stuff. We know that they have a big imprint on the remaining part of One Piece. What are your thoughts so far about the Cross Guild?
Yeah, so as a whole, I think Cross Guild is one of Oda's best concepts that he's came up with, especially because the concept of bounty hunters has been kind of a distant past in the series, right? It's been brought up early. We haven't really seen much of it. So they're essentially they are a Yonko organization who is actually placing bounties on the Marines too. And I think that is a game changer. And that's something that we are going to want to see, right? Obviously, it's a cool concept, but until it's actualized, until they actually go after a heavy hitter and maybe even bring them in, I think just first initial thoughts, that's something we'd like to see from Cross Guild, is them actually hunting some big names.
100%. I think that's the coolest part of the Cross Guild. Obviously, Mihawk, Crocodile, awesome stuff. But the overarching idea that we're going to now turn the target back on the Marines, the Navy, the world government, everybody, we're now putting a target on them is a very interesting concept after they've hunted pirates for so long. Hilarious that it's T-Bone is the first guy. That's the kind of the sacrificial lamb of the project. It's just a funny callback to Enos Lobby, but
yeah,
I thought that was funny. To summarize it again, a crown is worth $1 billion, a star is worth 100 million, and then there are special cases like a Kobe, like some of those guys that are worth different amounts due to where they fall in the military or in the Navy. So, right off the top, a Akainu worth $5 billion. It's such a great starting spot for someone who everybody's come to probably call as, I would assume, the Navy's heaviest hitter. And then you get 3 crowns for being an admiral, so on and so forth. What are your thoughts on that scale? Is $5 billion enough for Akainu? Because Oda has put his own stamp of approval on Akainu many times. What are your thoughts?
No, I mean, absolutely right. He's the head of the snake.
Yeah.
I think $5 billion is fair. It's above all the emperors, but it's below all of the people who we consider like the pirate king tier, which is like the 5 billion plus, right? So I do think based off Oda's past hype for Akainu that it makes sense. Obviously, bounty isn't directly related to strength, but it's a factor. It's one of the many factors.
Yes.
So I think it's probably fair. It makes me wonder too, if Sengoku being a former fleet admiral, does that mean he has the 5 billion as well, or is he just going to get the 3 billion? Right.
That's actually a good point, because I could see them going after him.
Yeah.
Because taking down the former fleet admiral, that's a big feather in your cap, and his Buddha form is fantastic, but having Mihawk and Crocodile on you at the same time, I don't know if there's anybody solo that has a chance of stopping those two together. So I'm glad you brought that up. I would say I'd almost give him the 4 crowns just for the respect factor.
Right, if that's possible, right? I mean,
I don't
maybe.
know if it is, but it might be. But obviously the respect to him. I would have been interested to see where they rated Garp also, since he's the legend of past. Did they give him a ranking?
I think they didn't. They gave him the 3.
Oh, was it the 3? Okay,
I
I
think that
might
was
have
stated
missed
in
that.
the Viva card, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if that was actually shown in the manga, but pretty sure it's 3.
Well, then that stand corrected. See, I would almost have them on the same tier then. So Sengoku would probably be 3. But
Yeah.
let's get into some of the Cross Guild members. We know Mihawk, he's got the 3.59 billion bounty. Consensus top 3, top 4 strongest characters right now.
Yep.
Active. Crocodile 1.96 billion. He's been portrayed to be on a similar level as Mihawk recently. And then Daz Bones, we know from his battles with Zoro, he is a extremely strong combatant. I would assume now with a hockey burst or a hockey bloom, he's going to be even more dangerous. They also, Buggy in his own right is, popular because he brings together all these pirates, but he's no slouch in a fight. But they've got some decent members. What would you like to see happen next for them? Because we've talked about this a little bit in the past. Is it going to be, warlords adjacent, or where do you want to see the next member of the Cross Guild come from?
Right, and I think that theme probably makes the most sense. I think it'd be really cool to break out a Doflamingo, maybe get a Gecko Moria if still possible, because they do need more heavy hitters, right? Obviously, Mihawk is fine. Crocodile kind of, most people are giving him maybe like the Yonko Commander 1 or 2 range, which would make sense just structurally, because
structure for sure.
If they're a Yonko organization, they're gonna be a similar like strength hierarchy to a Yonko organization, right? With Mihawk, even though he's not the Yonko, he's the Yonko level character.
Exactly.
So I would like to see them get more, because at this point, if they are going to go after the One Piece like Buggy's trying to make them, he's going to somehow finesse his way into the mix, right? At the moment, they're probably on the weaker side of all these factions in terms of overall power.
Right. Because here's the thing, is if your best 2 guys are Mihawk and Crocodile, the sole focus strictly goes to them, and you're going to get the main fighters all going after those 2. A Doflamingo, a Gecko Moria, to even add more members because of his zombie ability would make a lot of sense. I'm just trying to think. This is more of a question. I don't think this would happen, but could you see them trying to recruit a Boa Hancock, even though she's probably committed to the Straw Hats, I would say long term? What were your thoughts there?
Right. I was going to say she's probably the one where it's very unlikely, just for the fact that she would never join an opposing faction to Luffy at this point. I think it's just a little too late for that in the game, honestly.
Fair. And then obviously Kuma's out. So that, I mean, there's only a few options left. Jinbei's not an option. So it would have to be, do you think they would go after Whitebeard's bastard son? Yeah, Weevil.
That's a good one. Yes,
that's a big power boost right there.
I was thinking that too, because obviously his entire conflict has been built up with the Whitebeard Pirates and Marco, and I was actually assuming that would go somewhere a little earlier in the story, right?
So too.
Back when Marco was chilling on Whitebeard's hometown. I mean, I think he is still there, but it's like at this point, when is that conflict going to come to be, right? Are they just are we kind of over that at this point? Is Oda going to finish that plot line? I'm not really sure.
And I had similar thoughts. I always kind of thought that Oda would use Weevil to finish off Marco in theory because of that Whitebeard connection, and put Weevil on a bigger stage. But then the military came and they kind of took care of Weevil, and so I don't really know where they were going to go with that. Exactly. That's another character they can potentially break out and have join, and that would be probably your Yonko 3, Doffy, or Croc would be the Yonko 1.
Exactly.
So that layout to me makes a lot of sense. Mihawk, Crocodile, Doffy, and then Weevil, and then Buggy obviously would be sliding in there somewhere. That's a formidable 3 after Mihawk, who is obviously very, very strong. I think at the end we'll probably rank how we feel about these factions in terms of strength.
Sure.
But the Cross Guild has a lot of potential, like you said, and I'm really excited to see where they go next. But we're going next to the Red Hair Pirates. Obviously, Shanks, also consensus top 3 strongest right now. After we got to see the way he fights with Conqueror's Haki, that was an awesome thing, since we really haven't got to see him do much on the big scale on the big stage. this is probably our most well-rounded pirate crew based on everything we've heard and known about the Red Hair Pirates. Thoughts on where they sit right now in the terms of the big picture?
Yeah, so obviously they're in a good spot solely for the fact that Shanks is leading them and that their pirate crew is, well, their core members are specifically said to be the most well-rounded with like high average bounty across the board, right? We know that Shanks's team has the best officers. That's not even debatable. Like everybody agrees with that. But it seems like he has the weakest fleet overall because, Shanks being a pacifist and having that kind of character arc, he likes to put people under his umbrella who might not be able to survive in the new world on their own, which most pirate crews can't, right? But that was emphasized during when Kid and Killer attacked, that Shanks's fleet is kind of known to be the weakest. Yeah. And then, Shanks had to go and step in. So I think they're in good shape. I'd like to see more of it in Elbaf. I'd like to see them come back. I think they will. Maybe we can get more into Elbaf a little bit later. But obviously Shanks now has 3 poneglyphs. None of us know where the last one is. Presumably the man marked by flames is connected to that.
Yep.
So obviously Shanks is going to be in the mix here for when everybody's trying to get that 4th final poneglyph right now.
Definitely. And I like that you said that. So Ben Beckman, obviously the right hand of Shanks, Lucky Roo, Yasop, best sniper. It is a very strong top tier, but let me say this. Is there anybody you think potentially that has, could beat them heads up right now out of the remaining crews?
Straight up. So like core members versus core members is what you're thinking?
If you had to go 4v4, could Blackbeard's crew have a, I think they would have the best chance just based on their past history with Shanks and story wise. But Luffy, would it be too soon for Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Jinbei, that kind of, would it be, is it too early still for them to really be pushed by anybody else's core 4?
Pushed? No, I don't think it's too early, but actually win, I feel like that's a whole nother question, right? They're going to put up a good fight, 100%. Luffy at this point, I don't have him above any of the top tiers solely for the stamina issue that we talked about last week, right? Kizaru had to give him food on Egghead, and obviously he did beat Kaido after many, many rounds, but Luffy still has a way to go. I wouldn't take Zoro against Beckman. I wouldn't probably take Sanji against Rue, but I feel like they could put up a fight, obviously.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think that because, until Luffy solves his issues and until Zoro is able to control his Conqueror's Haki, they both have that little gap still there. I think, I think, Yasop is probably a bad matchup against Jinbei because, if Jinbei gets close at all, I don't know how he would be able to handle him. Sanji versus Rue, that'd be a fun battle. I would assume Rue's still got an upper hand. But, going through and looking at the Red Hair Pirates, I want to ask you about this because this is who we're going to bring up next, the world government. What do you think Shanks' connection to the world government is? Because he was able to walk into the room. He was able to have that conversation. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so obviously, from the events of the movies and the canon information that dropped, we know that he is, Fig Arland. And that just opens up so many possibilities. But here's the thing, is that whole scene is very fishy in hindsight now because we know by the way that former Celestial Dragons have been treated, you're essentially dead once you leave Marie-Joie. We saw the Doflamingo family leave Marie-Joie and, they're done, right? There's no more connection there. So it truly makes you think like, do they actually allow Shanks in there? Is he just maybe has that much respect in the world that they're going to hear him out? So what am I getting at with this? The twin brother theory has been going around a lot in the One Piece world. And I feel like it actually has a lot of validity to it. I feel like Shanks' connection to the world government could be like the plot line that we're going to be following could revolve around, his father, Saint Figurlin, now a Gorosei member, right? And maybe the twin brother, possibly. I feel like that's probably the direction we're going to go. Not have to be a twin brother, obviously, but probably a family member in some way.
They have to look very similar because they showed that side profile. Obviously, they didn't show the scarred side. It has to be very close to identical.
Yeah, that'd be a very specific mistake to make if Oda just forgot to draw it. Right?
It would be very off. But we'll talk about Red Hair Pirates again at the end when we kind of stack and rank these guys. Next, we are going to move to the world government. Emu, obviously supreme ruler sitting on the empty throne. We have the 5 elders now. We have Mars, Warkery, Nosturo, Jupiter, and we have Figurlin Garling, who has taken over for the deceased Saturn. This group poses issues for a lot of reasons, and let's take it from the top. Emu's ability, we are under the impression that he has one of the ancient weapons.
Yeah.
He was able to wipe that island off the map completely.
Malusia, yep.
And he has the ability to, it appears, give and take certain powers away from the members of the 5 elders. But also, we saw a little bit of a chink in the armor of Emu when Joy Boy's hockey went off. He, he kind of shuddered to that. So, not completely unbeatable, but this group is extremely, extremely strong. So, Emu, 5 elders, the Holy Knights are there. We still haven't got a lot of information on them besides, obviously, Figurlin being the leader and now an elder. So, give me your thoughts on that group and what's going on with the world government at this time.
Yeah. So, if you check Vegas right now, world government is like minus 250, I would say.
Yeah.
They're the favorites. They're the most stacked at the moment. Right. Most stacked team. Obviously the girls say, like, where you rank them power wise, it's kind of debatable at this point because we haven't really seen that much. But we know that they can bang, right? Oh, yeah. I don't know if they're actually top tier level with like the Yonkos and Admirals, but they have a unique ability of regeneration, which is going to cause a problem for anybody.
Definitely.
And Warkery was like probably the most impressive.
That guy was wrecking havoc.
So, yeah, that guy's a beast. Obviously, like you mentioned, Figurlin is now in the Gorosei after Saturn completely failed. Just from like a narrative standpoint, it does make me think that maybe Figurlin has his own agenda because in that panel, which is kind of like that's like our picture of this topic, right? Is that final panel showing all the parties. Figurlin has his own panel. Aokiji has his own panel, even though we know he's affiliated with Blackbeard. Maybe I'll flip the question back to you. Do you think Figurlin has a separate agenda than the Gorosei and the world government?
It's interesting because he is put on his own piece of the panel, like you said. He's not just in Emu's group. You almost think he has to, but at the same time, I'm like, what could it be? Does he want to vie for the throne? Does he have some connection like that where he, could potentially be there? I think that's a really nice theory. Him having his own agenda and potentially wanting to sit atop the throne and sit atop the world. You never know. Maybe back, hundreds of years ago, his family was, booted out somehow, or something happened where they didn't get to the throne somehow. There's a lot of different avenues you can go where his family was maybe rejected or something like that had happened. So I like that a lot. And that's a good catch by you, him being off on his own piece of the panel.
Yeah. And then obviously they have the pacifistas too. Like the Gorosei and the world government are number one on the pacifistas ranking. So they're going to continue to grow and cause a problem as well. So that's another whole factor.
Those guys, the Seraphim, are such an issue.
Yeah.
In general.
Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah.
No, you're totally fine. I know exactly what you mean. But the idea that Luffy compared them to punching Kaido, that's not good for literally anybody. No. Because no matter who you are, fighting Kaido is a tough night out no matter who you are. And punching and that being the same tier of punching for Luffy is kind of frightening. Let me ask you this. We know that they are all very strong. We know that they are beatable in terms of a fight, besides the fact that they have that regeneration.
Yep.
Do you think adding Figurlin, do you think he's their top combatant now?
I do, yes. I think that based on Figurelin's portrayal in the God Valley hunting incident and, all of those factors, just usually how in One Piece, fathers and sons are comparable. So if Shanks is this Yonko level character, then Prime Figurlin is probably a Yonko level character as well, right? And on top of that, now he presumably has the immortality and can probably transform into some sort of creature that maybe fits his personality a little bit more. I doubt that he's going to be the exact thing that Saturn was.
I would hope it's different. I would hope they go a different route. Yeah,
because I think you agree that this isn't a devil fruit. This is something completely different.
This is given to, I would assume.
Yeah, for sure. So I think given that information, it's safe to say Figurlin is in the top tiers of One Piece and probably the strongest Gorosei now.
Yep, I'm with you there. Obviously, the world government, very stacked because of the abilities they have. I would say, Do I think one of them could beat Kaido one-on-one? No. I don't know if I could go that far. I don't know if they could beat Shanks one-on-one. I don't know how that would work one-on-one. But man, that regeneration is such a difficult thing to get around.
Exactly. It's going to be a problem for sure. Also, I don't know if you so I was reading a theory the other day, and this could be wrong, obviously, but it's just fun to speculate. The strength hierarchy is based off how far you are away from the Earth. If Emu is supposed to represent the Earth, then Mars and Venus are the next strongest because they're the closest. And Saturn just got replaced, who was the farthest. So it makes sense that the weakest went down first and was replaced by who? By Garling, who's the moon, who's even closer than Mars and to Venus. So
I like that.
I think that probably makes the most sense at this point.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. We didn't see as much from Venus. Well, we saw Venus Duro flex, and we saw what's his name, Mars flex a little too, but they weren't as involved, I feel like, as the other ones.
Right. So we got to see a little bit of Nosturo when I like his I think he has my favorite of the transformations so far.
Yes.
The half horse, half man. I guess, what is that, a centaur or something? Is that
something like that? Yeah.
But yeah, I liked his the most. But yeah, Mars, Warkery, we saw a lot of those two, and I thought they were pretty impressive in their own right. Warkery being the most impressive, but I like the way that you laid that out with the celestial bodies, the planets, and how that works out. I think that's a fun theory, and I think that could be really important going forward. Let's transition though.
Yep.
Let's talk about the other piece of the world government, and that would be the actual Navy side of things, the Marines. Let's start at the top. We talked about him a little bit earlier. Akainu, Fleet Admiral, by all regards, probably one of the two strongest people in the verse right now. I mean, he almost has to be able to, it was always, to me, it always had to, the Navy and the Marines, they have to be on that tier or else they would get overrun. It would never be a real fight. So to me, he has to be one of the top couple in the verse. And then you get into the admirals, Kizaru, Fujitora, Green Bull, and then you go down the line from there. What are your thoughts on where the military sits right now in the Navy? Where are they at?
Yeah, so similar thoughts to what I mentioned regarding Aokiji and regarding Figureland. Do the admirals have their own agendas in the end, or are they just going to end up being slaves of the world government, right? We saw that Oda likes to, at least in the arcs where the admirals are involved, their character arcs are going to be revolved around their sense of justice and whether they can actually carry out that sense of justice. Fujitora, we saw it firsthand. He completely has, at this point, seems like he's abandoned the world government. He even let slaves free at Marijua and even fought Green Bull. Like, he started fighting Green Bull after that. It's kind of funny, actually. We saw Kizaru's sense of justice be challenged when he had to kill his best friend, right? Lazy justice, I guess you'd call it. But that obviously was conflicting. We've seen Aokiji's sense of justice. He just straight up left the world government because he wasn't going to work on Akainu because why? He doesn't agree with that line of justice. And then he had another conflict where he's fighting Garb. Obviously, he's joined Blackbeard at this point, but that was again tested. Could he beat his old master, right? Could he go through with it? And he struggled to do so. So I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to see Green Bull and Akainu's sense of justice be challenged in the same way as those guys once we maybe dive deeper into those arcs, get closer to the One Piece or the Final War or whatever.
And I think we are going to see more of that because Akainu's already had issues with the way the Five Elders operate and 100%. The way the world government's already operated. Yeah. To me, I always think I don't think his justice is ever going to be tested. It's either his way or the highway. And if you don't side with him, you're going to get a magma punch to the face. Like that's always been the way he handles things. And I appreciate that. I think he's been very interesting in his own right. I would obviously like to see more. Yeah. Green Bull, same thing. I'm interested to see what you think because of the Fujitora situation. Akainu to me seems like the type that isn't going to let that slide.
Right.
Is there a possibility of a new admiral coming? What do you think? I mean, there has to be some kind of consequences, in my opinion, of Akainu's justice for a Fujitora and what he's done.
No, right. I mean, you'd think at this point that the Celestial Dragons would order him to be executed based on what happened in Marijua. Like, that's the logical thing. Nothing suggests, though, that that's happening at this point based on what we've seen. So it is interesting, yes. And to piggyback off your point about Akainu and the absolute justice, right? I agree. I don't think it's going to be a point where like he has a character redeeming arc or anything like that. I think that might be a little too corny for Akainu.
Yeah,
but
that doesn't.
I do think it could be challenged in the way, as opposed to like maybe once he finds out the true intentions behind the world government, whether he can still carry out that absolute justice or not. Maybe something along those lines, right? Because I feel like he has to be tested at some point. So I don't know. We'll see.
He definitely needs to be tested because it's happened for the other admirals to this point. So I think you're right there. It's just how do you test somebody who's so dead set on being the way they are. My next question, obviously a very, very strong 4, a very impressive 4. I mean,
yes,
that you could put them up against almost anybody and it would be very good, very good fight. But after that, we have an issue with Garp being out of commission, with Sengoku being borderline retired, and we even hinted at maybe liking to see the Cross Guild go after Sengoku.
Yep.
Is Kobe the next in line in terms of strength for the Navy after the Admirals right now?
Yeah, it's got to be. Obviously, we're probably not counting Khan at this point because that guy is just
he just never showed up. It's hard to give him. Obviously, in lore, we know he's extremely powerful, but we can't go off of him maybe showing up and feeling like fighting today. So, I mean, based on what we know, do you think Kobe's next in line in terms of power?
I would say so. Yeah, I think just everything you've seen with the events on Pirate Island and how Kobe's dream kind of mirrors Luffy's dream in the beginning, right? He wants to achieve the pinnacle of the Navy. Luffy wants to achieve the pinnacle of piratehood. So, I would like to see him become an admiral. I mean, obviously, he's going to be one.
What if he takes Fuji's spot? Is that not the spot right there for him?
Yeah, definitely possible.
I mean, that is thrusting him into a big spot, though.
Yeah.
But I like this conversation because where does Fuji go then? Because Fuji's justice almost lines up more with the Straw Hats. I'm not saying he joins the Straw Hats. I'm just saying his morals and everything lines up along more with Luffy. And we saw that at Dressrosa. We saw where, he was tearing up. He would like to see Luffy smile. It's crazy. I know. I understand. But like, it lines up a little bit that he could potentially, leave the Navy. And I'm not saying join the Straw Hats, but wherever he goes from there, because it lines up morality wise.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, he's not going to join the crew, but being an ally, it's a possibility. Being an ally of the Revolutionary Army, I mean, he just freed slaves with them. That's a possibility. It is hard to predict where he goes at this point because he is following his own moral code, and that's clearly not aligning with the world government. So it's gonna be interesting for sure.
Do you think Akainu would be willing to move up Kobe though because of their history? Or do you think Kobe would take the spot because of their history?
So
he's not protected by Garp anymore either, which is kind of I would say at least there was a buffer there between them. But now do you think that plays a factor still or no?
I think so, but I also think the biggest factor is just the strength factor because you need to achieve a certain level of strength to even be the admiral position, right?
Right.
So I don't think he hasn't achieved that yet. And then maybe they'd give him a devil fruit. I don't know. That'd be cool. But yeah, that is a good point. It is hard to see him being an admiral under the Akainu administration, right?
That's why, like, because they had the issues and Akainu was going to put him down at Marineford. Let me ask you one more thing on the military, the Navy, everybody. Do you have to have a devil fruit to be an admiral?
I don't
because
remember.
It's kind of been laid out that way now, but we know Garp was offered the spot and he doesn't have a devil fruit, but everybody else has always had a devil fruit.
Right.
Do you think that matters for them?
Unless I'm not remembering correctly from an SBS or something, I don't know. It's probably just a schematic choice by Oda to have the light, the ice, and the magma, right? And then obviously Green Bull and
nature.
Yeah, exactly.
Space. Gravity, not space, but gravity.
So yeah, unless I'm mistaken and don't remember from an SBS or something, I don't think it's a requirement, but it's probably a cool schematic choice at this point.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's excellent. I'm just like, but he could turn it down like Garp and just be a vice admiral. There's the connection back. I don't know. They just have a power issue after you get after the top 4 is what I'm trying to say. And I think
admirals are trash is what you're saying.
Well, they kind of are. I mean, if
Yeah,
you
they
look
are.
at it, we've got, Smoker's my guy, and he always will be, but Oda left him behind, way behind. I always kind of thought he would just, I don't know, I thought he would kind of be in Kobe's position. I thought he would be kind of Luffy's rival on the back burner and be
Mhm.
there, but Luffy kind of won him more over also,
Yep,
if you remember, but, and then Law saved him. So, but, when you got guys like Doberman, Dalmatian, Lawns, Maynard, they're going to struggle a little bit in these big conflicts.
for sure, for
But
sure.
let's move on though. Let's talk about the Blackbeard Pirates.
Yep.
I mean, the perfect pirate crew, correct? I mean, when you look at these guys, they are the optimum of what a pirate is thought to be. They are great foils. What are your thoughts on the Blackbeard Pirates before we really get into them?
Yeah. So what I like about them is that they are the counterparts to the Straw Hats, right? The foils, and they seem to still be growing and training as well, just like the Straw Hats. Most crews seem to be established. Like the Red Hair Pirates probably aren't getting any stronger, aren't getting any more notorious, but the Blackbeards are supposed to be climbing the ranks still, as we saw with Blackbeard's bounty only being 2 billion when the time skip started, and then now it's up to almost 4.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're hunting devil fruits. They're just going crazy on the devil fruits. So I'm hoping they can continue to get more powers. Von Auger said that he was still training his teleport fruit on Egghead. Remember that?
Right.
So he's still getting better with that. Aokiji, I don't think can be counted on as an asset for them. Obviously, we know he has some sort of agenda, and when you take Aokiji out of the equation, it lines up for a perfect 10v10 with the Straw Hats. So that's not happening, obviously, at least in my opinion. I don't know. Do you agree with that?
I just don't think he can be there because
Yeah.
he's such an outlier.
Yeah.
You can't. To me, it's just not fair schematically to have
Mhm.
a Blackbeard and an Aokiji on the same two top tiers. But yeah, I think the 10v10 is obviously the end game, and somehow Aokiji is going to either be. I always thought the Revolutionaries were the right move for him. Long term. Maybe he is a deep spy. It's possible. It's going pretty deep to have to beat Garp like that though, to get the
Mhm.
information you need. But yeah, I just think top to bottom right now, I like the idea that they are going out and hunting down these strong characters to take their devil fruits to help their crew get stronger. Like you said, Van Auger still working on his devil fruit. Burgess still just had gotten his fruit.
Yeah.
We don't know a lot about Lafayette still. I find Lafayette very interesting for some reason. We
Mhm.
know Doc's got a fruit. We know Vasco Shot's got a fruit. San Juan Wolf, Katarina Devon, who I think is going to be a big issue for the Straw Hats. Her
Sure.
ability to copy people is going to be huge. Now that she's copied Saturn, I don't know how that works out now that Saturn's dead. That could cost her if she tries to maybe interact with the world government. That would be an interesting thing.
Mhm.
A very strong group right now, and we'll touch on them more. What member outside of Blackbeard do you think is the biggest issue going forward?
Biggest issue for like the Straw Hats or biggest issue in
Biggest issue
general?
if Blackbeard Pirates were to fight another crew, who do you think would be? I mean, I think we have the same answer, but who
Yeah.
is it Shiryu?
Yeah, I'd say so. He seems to be portrayed as the guy who is the most dangerous besides Blackbeard. What I find interesting is that they parallel, obviously, the crew structure parallels the Whitebeard crew structure, right? Which would make sense since Blackbeard came from Whitebeard. And the second division commander spot was held by Odin at first. And
Mm-hmm.
Shiru has the second commander spot now. So I think that's kind of interesting. Power structure wise, because obviously we know Odin was much more than a commander. So we'll probably find out if Shiru is actually much more than a commander, but that's just kind of his like title.
Definitely. And
Also, I think
he will
oh
be,
yeah,
right? I think he will be
yeah,
strong.
yeah.
I think
I'm
he,
sure he will.
yeah. But go
Like
on. Yes.
we haven't seen it much yet, but that's for a reason probably. But I also find it interesting how they now have Caribou, who has information on 2 ancient weapons. So Blackbeard's going to know about Pluton and Poseidon very soon, and so that could be interesting for what's being built up in Elbaf and whatnot.
Question for you, because we know that they have the prisoners. They have what, Pudding, Garp, Morier, and Kobe right now.
Mhm.
Do you think we get to see a clash between the Cross Guild and them potentially, or do we get to see maybe a minor battle, any of that kind of stuff coming up?
That's a good question. I think that could be a possibility, because there's always the possibility that this whole thing could turn into a battle royale for the One Piece, right? We haven't really talked about that possibility yet, but I wanted to bring it up that Elbaf seems to be the only arc where we don't actually know what the plot line is yet. We have information regarding it, but we don't know the enemy. We don't know like the deeper understanding of the arc, aside from the fact that it's known as, a war zone, right? People fought over Elbaf in the past, and that probably has to do with the geography of Elbaf. So given that the fact that the world, was drenched in a flood, it's going to happen again, right? At some point. Elbaf's going to be a valuable land at some point, whether that is what kicks off Ragnarok and whatnot, and all of everybody's fighting for Elbaf, the land. I don't know. Something along those lines could kind of tie into everybody going after all the main factions going after the One Piece, right?
Yeah. I like the idea that it's more, I've really kind of clung to the individual matchups, because I've always liked the way, the Straw Hats, get their fights. And I've always thought that was really good for the crew. But like you said, a battle royal situation, you can still get matchups inside of a battle royal that are awesome.
Exactly.
Let me ask you this, and I think it's kind of been foreshadowed a bit. Does Blackbeard kill Shanks by the end of the story?
Man, it's so hard, because that's what we're being built up to believe. But it could be just a situation where it's so obvious that it's not going to happen, especially with the Figarland element in there. Now it makes me almost think that Shanks has to confront those guys at some point too. And maybe that is his final battle, is against Figarland Garland, right? But I'm still going to say yes. I'm still going to say yes on the Blackbeard Shanks thing.
When you said the Figarland thing with Shanks, I was like, could you imagine Shanks standing up to all 5 of the elders at the same time? Like, obviously I feel like Shanks would probably try to save his crew in that scenario, but I like that. But it just, we've been conditioned to believe that Blackbeard and Shanks are going to have an epic confrontation. And, can Shanks really let Blackbeard get away with scarring him like that all those years ago? I think it matters, but that would be such an epic clash to see them get their final battle. But I really don't mind the confrontation between Shanks and Figarland also, to see, how strong those two guys really are.
Right. Or what the conflict is, right? Because obviously we know that Roger and Rayleigh found Shanks on God Valley as like a little baby.
Stole it, I would assume.
Yeah, exactly. So what happened, regarding that?
Yeah.
How much does Shanks actually know about his lineage, heritage, whatnot? Does he hold any animosity? Those are all questions that are going to be answered soon, hopefully.
Yeah, that's really good. So, like we said, eventually we feel like Aokiji has to drop off.
Mm-hmm.
We know I'd like to see Aokiji, I'd like to see him be and he has his own panel here. So we know he's going to be part of the potential battle royal. But where is he fighting? Who is he fighting for? What is he fighting for? Is he, where does he go from here? And I think that's an extremely interesting part of the Blackbeard Pirates, along with some of their potential matchups. And we'll talk about that at the very end. Next, we're going to talk about the Straw Hats, because the Straw Hats obviously play a huge part in this also.
Yep.
And we talked about this the last couple of weeks. We talked about the Straw Hats in depth, so we won't go crazy here. We know they're close. We know they're close to some of the top tier crews. We know they are, on the precipice of being there. We've talked about what it's going to take to get them there already. On Elbaf, what is your prediction for the Straw Hats? Do they fight giants? Do they win over the giants somehow? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so obviously
win over the giants, I guess.
Yeah, well, the giants are, Shanks' guys, but Luffy is still very friendly with them. Dory Broggy, we all saw what happened on Egghead with the giants, helping them out and whatnot. So I would personally like to see the conflict with the red hair escalate, because I feel like they do need a confrontation at some point. Now, is that confrontation going to have a lot of animosity like most antagonist-protagonist relationships? No. But there is a conflict being built up with the Barto stuff. I don't think that's in there for no reason, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately, there's not enough information about Loki yet and those guys to determine whether they're going to be the main villains. I just don't see Loki as the main villain given his introduction. It's not like a lot of the other antagonist introductions, right? Luffy doesn't usually just meet them in like the first chapter and like you get what I'm saying though? It's like
I'm with you.
It's not a normal structure.
It's definitely different. I like the fact that Luffy was willing to go after him though for Shanks. That dynamic is still so important.
Yes.
That mentorship that Shanks gave to him. But like you said, at some point, it's gonna have to come to a head. Shanks and then they didn't kill Bardo. They didn't go too far, I think, for what he was doing to them. It could have been worse. It really could have been. He could have killed them very easily. So I feel like maybe Luffy can overlook that probably. But at some point, you're both going in the same direction. You have to make that decision on, that was my father figure, but I want to be king of the pirates more than I want him to be my father. So I do like that you brought that up because there's going to have to be a moment. And to me, Luffy's going to have to go earn Shanks's respect in the world. I know we saw the panel where I believe Shanks said it was too soon.
Yes.
When he was reading the bounties.
Yes.
And then Luffy got officially named a Yonko.
Mm-hmm.
I still feel like he has to get that respect from Shanks. And at some point, Shanks may have to eat a Gear 4 punch or something from Luffy to get that respect and to show that they are serious going forward. Yeah. And I think that Elbaf could be the very place where that comes to fruition. Yep. Let's talk Loki for a second.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go.
No. Good point. We'll go to Loki in a second.
Okay.
This is also a good opportunity for Usopp to show his father what he missed out on.
Yes.
Like, he's always thought about Usopp, yada, yada. It doesn't matter. You weren't there. But this is a good opportunity for Usopp to be like, look what you missed out, Dad. I could be better than you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think that could happen here on Elbaf too. I think that would be very interesting if they could, have a sniper battle competition, however, not necessarily trying to maim each other, but some kind of, maybe a similar battle to what him and Daddy the Father had back in early in One Piece. And then, like you said, go ahead. What you were saying. I was just wanted to touch on that last part.
Oh, right. Yeah. So I was just going to say that maybe that format comes in like a Davy Bag duel or something like that along those lines. That's been heavily speculated by fans. But also it's just an arc where we know Usopp has to have a character arc, right? This is his arc where he's like truly going to hopefully make those steps to becoming a brave warrior of the sea. We've seen the hints, in the flashes, but this is the arc, right? Him, the Giants, Shanks's character. I think Shanks's character arc too. Maybe even Eustace Kid. That's kind of a wild card being thrown in there, but I think he could potentially be here on Elbaf as well.
Guy's dead. The guy's dead.
You think he's cooked?
He's the Browns of One Piece. I said last piece. No, but I don't hate that. I think Kid definitely still has a role in One Piece, but I guess Luffy never gives up when he gets beat by somebody. So I could see Kid going after Shanks another time if he's still out there. Yeah, I don't mind that at all. And then let's talk about Loki, and then we'll kind of get back into our rankings here.
Sure.
Friend or foe? You said you don't think he's the main enemy, is he? What do you think?
I don't think he's the main enemy, but I think he is going to be maybe some sort of chaotic neutral of some sort, possibly, or I don't know, like some sort of threat, obviously, in the way. There's just not enough information at the moment to really speculate, but it seems like he's eating a devil fruit, that he thinks he's the sun god, right? He thinks he's going to bring the dawn of the world, but we know Luffy is the Nika fruit. So could this be because on Little Garden, Dory and Broggy are talking about the Elbaf god, but it's not the sun god, right? That's like the main god of Elbaf, the god of war, right? Mm-hmm. Their whole entire culture is ingrained in war and battle. They're known as the strongest nation. So does Loki have maybe the Elbaf god warrior devil fruit or something along those lines, right? I don't know. I think it'd be cool for sure.
It would be. And I'm more interested too, because they're the warriors, and he's got that big hammer on his back. Could that be Mjolnir? Could that be, Thor's hammer, potentially, something like that? There's a lot that we can get into. I want to know if he was able to push Shanks at all, because Shanks, Shanks became the Yonko 6 years ago, and some kind of confrontation happened between him and Shanks. That, he's got that special, what is it, 2.6 billion bounty?
2.6, yeah.
I mean, that's nothing to snuff at or whatever. I mean, that's a big time bounty. I want to see what Loki can do. I'm very interested to see friend or foe. What's he going to do? Is he a neutral, like you said? Is he just kind of a shit stirrer? I mean, that's definitely possible too. Because he has the name Loki. People keep thinking he could be, the Marvel related to the Marvel character with the tricks and everything. We don't know. I like your idea of the devil fruit being, a warrior god type thing. That's really cool.
Because it was called legendary. Remember, that devil fruit was also called legendary, kind of the same way that the Nika fruit is. So it's going to be nothing to slouch at for sure. Definitely. And he thinks he's the sun god. So
and I'm kind of waiting for Luffy to be like, "But you're not," and he shows him, and then everybody's like, "Oh." Do you think that's what it is though? When they see Luffy in Gear 5, that is like,
oh yeah, they'll know. They'll know.
Gotta,
sure.
There's got to be that moment.
Kuma knew and all the other legends, they know. Bonnie knew as soon as they saw it. Like,
right.
Exactly. It'll happen.
All right. Let's get to the final part here. One Piece factions. We named what did we name? 2, 4, 6, 7 of the final factions. Based on strength. We're gonna go based on strength here.
Okay.
Who is your number one strongest of the factions remaining?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, at this point, I think it has to be just the Celestial Dragons. I'm going to call that the Celestial Dragons / God Knights, like all of those guys. For the reasons I said, they obviously have the most information. Now, does that mean that they're going to be like actually sailing the seas at some point to try to find the One Piece? I don't know, because it's presumed that Marijois is going to be the final arc itself, where all their stuff is going to go down. But yeah, that's my number one at this point for sure. Would you agree?
Yes, I agreed. I have them number one. Emu, obviously, we have a lot to learn still, but I think he's going to be an extreme problem with the ability to wipe off islands off the map. Obviously, the 5 elders with their ability to regenerate and their not devil fruits, but their special abilities. That's going to be another issue. The Holy Knights are going to be fun when we get to that part. So I would have them number one also. Since you went number one, I'll go number 2.
Sure.
I'm going to choose the Red Hair Pirates number 2 for this reason. If the Navy had a couple guys below the admirals that were, besides Kobe, if they had a couple guys that were pretty damn impressive, I would put them 2. But right now, Shanks, most well-rounded crew. Shanks himself is going to be a massive problem. I got the Red Hair Pirates 2 for me.
Okay. So I actually have the Straw Hats at number 2. And that's not because of their top 4, like how we did the top 4. It's because of the totality of everything, right? Because they still have Fishman Island with Poseidon. They have the whole Wano crew. They've got, Dressrosa. So I think just in totality, the Straw Hats are still like, and then their grand fleet, of course. I think just with all the extra stuff, that really gets them up there.
That's good.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning.
That's good. Yeah, no, that's definitely worth a lot. So I think that's a good one. I actually had Straw Hats 3 for similar reasons.
Yeah.
I still think there's a big gap there. Not a big gap, but a gap there between the Straw Hats and the Red Hair Pirates, person for person. But I have the Straw Hats because of the overall, that Straw Hat fleet is very impressive. After this arc, they very well could swing the rest of the Giants to them, and that would be a massive upgrade too. So I have them 3. Who's your 3?
Yeah, so for a while, I probably would have chosen the Navy, but given the recent events, like we said, Fujitora, like context matters here when we're talking about these rankings. Fujitora can't be counted on. Kizuru, I don't know if he can be counted on at this point. He did, but he's wavering, right? And they don't have control of the Seraphim. That's under the world government. So I actually have the Revolutionaries slightly over the Red Hairs. Dragon and Shanks is kind of a push, right? That's probably a push.
But we don't know. So how is that fair, though? Let me use your own point against you. We don't know. But, we don't know about Fujitora's alliance. We don't know about Kizuru. We still don't know about Dragon. We can assume, but so how do you make that distinction in your head?
What do you mean? Sorry, could you elaborate? Like, you don't know Dragon's allegiance or his strength level?
No, his strength level. Because,
yeah.
I agree. I think Dragon's probably top 5, top 3. However you want to distinguish it. Yeah. But if we're gonna use a certain criteria for not having the Navy in the 3rd spot, why would you give the Revolutionaries the nod?
Well, okay, so when it comes to Dragon himself, I just think there's enough evidence to just put him in that Yonko tier for sure.
Okay.
His grandfather's Monkey D. Garp, who went head toe to toe with Roger. His son is Monkey D. Luffy, the future Pirate King. So why would the Monkey D, the only one who's in his prime, not be on that level? I think that there's just too much logic there.
Mhm.
And I think with Sabo's growing influence, he has probably the same linear projection as Ace with his fruit. He might even fight Akainu, like possibly if Luffy doesn't. I mean, that has to be a possibility. So he should be almost there. The Rev commanders, obviously the admirals were holding back in Marijua, but they still were kind of like, tangoing a little bit with them. I think those commanders can maybe scale to like average Yonko commanders, like the Big Mom and Beast Pirates, possibly. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they've had 10 revolutions lately, I think. Like 8 of the 12 territories they've had have revolted against their kings. So they're building clout. And I think that they have just a lot of momentum going for them. So they kind of inch out red hair for me in just a little bit. But obviously it's close, right?
Yeah, that's totally fair. I like that choice. I just wanted to see logically how you went about it, and that's perfectly fine. I'm with you there. Obviously, I have Dragon in the same tier, and Sabo potentially, like you said, Ace type potential, and Ace had Pirate King type potential. Exactly. So I'm with you there. I would love to see if he could beat Akainu and if he could burn hot enough to burn Akainu. I think that'd be a great callback. Right. Maybe not have to even beat Akainu, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm more of a fan of Luffy versus Akainu. I always have been. I think absolute freedom versus absolute justice is just thematically a beautiful battle. Mm-hmm. But I can't deny that there's a possibility that this could be Sabo's fight. Just given how many factions there are, it'd be ignorant of me to say that it's impossible for it to happen. Right?
Totally fair. Number 4. Who's your number 4 then?
That's a good question because I didn't go that far in the rankings. So let me think here for a second. I'll probably choose the red hairs, just given our conversation there. I think that's probably fair.
That is fair. This is where, I mean, we're really kind of splitting hairs here because I had the revolutionaries right behind the Straw Hats, just because when we get the Dragon information, we can redo this. I need to know for a fact he's the guy, and then I'm good. I'm totally good. In my head, I'm like, yes, he's the one for sure. I would love to see him fight Emu. I would love to see that and see how it looks.
And that's another thing too, right? Is if that's the most likely fight before Luffy finishes the deal, then that's only going to boost his stock even more. If he even goes toe to toe with Emu, like in any way.
That's totally fair. So Revolution is there at 4. Number 5 is I feel like putting the Blackbeard Pirates last second to last seems low, but I'm going to go Navy here because I think even at the end of the day, if their 4 guys show up, their 4 guys are going to beat a majority of the 4 guys in these other 4 factions. So I'm going to go Navy here at 5.
Me too, just because Akainu, Aokiji can't be counted on for the Blackbeards too, right? Like we said, the context matters. So I'm with you on Navy there. And then for me, I guess I'll just finish off my list. Blackbeards and then Crossgoat at this point. But obviously we know Crossgoat has a lot of potential for upward movement, but every character, every single faction we have here has at least one Yonko Admiral level character. Mm-hmm. But Crossgoat is literally only their top tier, and then Crocodile. And that's just not going to cut it at this point.
It's not enough, and that's why we're under the impression that they're going to get stronger and add more heavy hitters. They're going to have to.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm totally with you there. Blackbeard Pirates at 6, and then Crossgoat at 7. So top to bottom, a very loaded topic today, Shady. There's so many avenues, and it's hard to have this conversation, and not spawn off a conversation here, kind of spawn off a conversation there. I think we did a good job covering it all today. Is there anything you want to touch on before we get out of here today?
I guess just to conclude, it's a fun topic. It was the good timing for this topic, and I hope my list changes because there's so many moving parts. There's so many just like political avenues that are going down, right, with alliances and different stuff going on. So these are just predictions at the end of the day because there's still a lot we don't know. And I hope that all these factions get their fair shine, in the Battle of the One Piece and as we get closer to the end.
Totally with you there. At the end of the day, at some point, the Straw Hats are going to be the strongest crew. The Blackbeard Pirates are going to be, probably the second strongest crew. When Sabo potentially takes over the Revolutionaries, where do they end up? This is a topic that, unfortunately at the end of One Piece, we can circle back to and say, look at how it all ended up and look where we had it here. So it's going to be a potentially fun topic to look back on when we get to that final part of One Piece.
Yes.
So Shady, I appreciate you. We spent an hour tonight talking One Piece. I love it. I appreciate you as always, man.
Yeah,
it's
man.
been fun. Episode 3, One Piece Factions. This has been the Cross Guild Chronicles, and we will see you guys next week for another episode. See you guys.